Hey everyone, it's Cindy Lou with CHRO Partners. I'm joining you from Dallas, Texas today, and I've got Holly Novak. Where are you joining us from, Holly?
I am joining also, north of Dallas, so
North of Dallas.
Little Elm area. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Welcome. We're going to have Holly tell you a little bit about herself. Before we get started, I just wanted to let everyone know that the comments that are made today will be those of Holly Novak personally, not of her organization, Jack Henry. And she has a wealth of knowledge that she's going to bring. And today we're going to talk about kind of the pivotal moments, either leading up to the CHRO or CPO role, as well as some of the big moments that are coming up for us, including this whole AI revolution that we're living in. So,
Mhm.
if you're joining us as Holly's introducing herself, can you pop into the chat and just let us know where you're joining us from today? So, Holly, over to you.
All right. So, hi, Holly Novak. I am the current Chief People Officer for Jack Henry. We are financial technology, so we provide technology for banks and credit unions, usually mid-size. I've been in the HR space for a long time, about 25 years, starting in staffing actually, and then I was in nonprofit for about 12 years, and then in consulting for a little bit, and then I started at Jack Henry almost 7 years ago as an HR business partner leader, and then kind of moved my way up the ladder to head up our HR operations team. And then I've been in my role as CPO for about 3 years. So, yeah, it's been a ride.
So, understand for you that one of the big pivotal moments was just deciding whether or not
Yeah.
you wanted to be the CPO.
Yeah, absolutely. I was a little surprised when my boss, the chief people officer, decided to move on to a different role within inside the company, and they suggested that I apply, and I just what it took me a while. We had to have a little family meeting to really decide, and it was a big jump for me. So going from a lower level position, even thinking about applying for the CPO role, you have a lot of pressure at it. There's a lot of scrutiny. There's a lot of travel, a lot of hours, and so we had a little family meeting to kind of talk that through and decide, do we as a family are interested in that? Do we want to do that? And yeah, and I made the decision to apply, and it was a few months of very stressful interviewing process and all of that before I got the job. But yeah, I'm glad I did now. But it was a big decision. Yeah.
We are too. You brought a lot to this world of chief HR and people officers. I had the privilege of watching Holly go from her previous role in HR operations to the chief people officer role, and I must say that you did it with such grace. Like so often, I see people step into that top role and you're never fully prepared. I've never heard a single person say, "Oh, I was perfectly developed," right, to take over that role.
Mhm.
And just because I think there's so many confidential conversations, so I'd love for you to comment on that. But I want to say hello to some folks here today.
Yeah, I see him
Elizabeth,
popping in.
Mike, Summer, Aiden. Looks like we've got Chicago in the house with Terry, and then another Terry with I, and then Terry from Dallas. Good to see you guys. Amitra from Dallas and Johan from Dallas. So, or for live in Fort Lauderdale, but Dallas is home. Okay, awesome. Great. Thanks to everybody for joining us. And really appreciate you saying hello because we actually can't tell if anybody's on this call at all
Yeah.
unless you say hello. So it's kind of, are we just having a conversation by ourselves or what? But yeah, Holly, tell us a little bit of what that entry into that role was like and just how you handled that with such grace.
Oh gosh. I like as you mentioned, there's no way that you can fully prepare for stepping into a role like this before you get into it. I think um, as much as anybody can do to kind of prep you for it, you don't really understand the full scope and the full just pressure and all those things until you kind of step into it. And so I really appreciate that you said that I have grace. I did not feel prepared. It took me a lot of research and learning, and it's still, I mean, daily I learn things, and I still don't feel prepared fully at times to do the role, and I'm still surprised a lot of times that I even am in this role. It's a big role, and so it's nice of you to say that. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think just a lot of learning, a lot of listening, a lot of being curious, learning the business, all of those things is super important.
Yeah. So when we were talking before, you said something about like you've got to build those relationships, right? Not just with the CEO. Give us a little bit of context as to who Jack Henry is for the
Yeah.
folks joining us today.
Yeah. So, Jack Henry, as I mentioned, we're financial technology. We have about 7,000 employees all throughout the US. So we're only US based. We're not international. And we, like I said, we provide all kinds of technology for banks and credit unions, mid-sized banks and credit unions. And I think, one of the biggest things, I had some good relationships with some of our senior leaders before, of course, being an HRVP and all that stuff. But it kind of surprised me just how deep your relationship has to be, not only with your CEO, of course, but also with your CFO and with your chief legal officer and your COO, and really making sure that as you're working through, like I mentioned before, I got into my role actually during COVID, right? And so I was in HR operations. We were walking through all of that. And then that continued on after I got my role. And I think as we make, super hard decisions, work through stuff that we never thought in a million years would happen in our world, you have to have that tight alignment and that tight relationship and that trust built with those, especially those people, to really be successful in the role. So that takes some time, obviously, to build that trust and camaraderie and collaboration and all of that, but it's super important. Yeah.
I was laughing before when you told me that you stepped into the role and then the pandemic happened.
Yeah.
And I know your predecessor, she's the one who recommended you to join our mastermind
Yeah.
groups. And I was laughing. I'm like, nice going there, Tiffany.
Yeah.
Like, bye-bye. Okay.
That's
Goodbye.
such a good. And
Yeah.
actually, she was in the role a little bit through COVID, right? And so, but yeah, good times. Yeah.
All right. Well, welcome, David from Dallas. Somebody from Dallas that I can't see their name for some reason. Paige and hey, Eric, Tracy. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, hi,
Like
everyone.
Pensacola. We've got Sean Herman.
Some other people not from Dallas. That's good.
All
That's
right.
wonderful.
Yep. We're having some
Yeah.
people at maybe their lunch hour. Okay. So these relationships, everybody talks about these relationships, like, and you mentioned getting to know the business better, even more in this role than you did as a business partner or in your HR operations role. Tell me specifically, what were some of the things that you did that really helped you leapfrog and get to know the business more?
Yeah, I think just being involved in, budget meetings and strategy meetings, all of that is super helpful. But one of the biggest things I focused on early on, and I still do it, is just really trying to figure out, like, how do we make money as an organization? Where does our revenue come from? How, what's our biggest expenses? Of course, that's people, right? Because we don't have equipment. But what does that look like? And just truly understanding, what are we interested in the future for innovation? Like, what does that look like? And then how do we support that from a people perspective to make sure that we have the right people in place to be successful? And so really just focusing as much as possible on the business acumen. I had a little bit of it because I was an HRBP before, right? But I only was in, certain pockets of the organization. And so as a big picture organization, like, what is it that is most important to us? How do we make money? How do we lose money? What does that all mean? And then really focusing on how to support our leaders through that has been my biggest focus, and it still is every day.
Right. So there's only so many hours in a day. How do you pick and choose where you're going to spend your time?
It depends on what fire is happening at the moment.
Right.
And so I think every day is different. But I am never afraid to ask to be in a meeting. And so if I see something that's going on, I recently talked to my CEO about really talking to clients more, because I feel like, we support mid-sized banks and credit unions. They have people issues too. And so really trying to understand what are their biggest pain points, so that as we're thinking through from an employee's perspective, how do we support them as our clients? And so really understanding that more and being in front of them more has been important to me. That's on my goal list for this year. And so I think that's super important, of having that perspective of what's really, really important overall for our company, but also for our clients.
Yeah, no, I think that's so smart. I think retail does that so well. Like I remember years ago, I had some friends that worked in a corporate for Crate and Barrel in Chicago, and I'd be like, let's go to lunch. They're like, we can't in December because all of us at corporate go and work in the stores.
Oh,
And
yeah,
so
that's
I'm
nice.
like,
Yeah.
that's so smart, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if they still do that, but I was like, that's a really smart thing to do. So you're literally, in the trenches with the
Yeah.
employees every day, interfacing with the
Understand the
customer.
pain.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. So speaking of innovation, one of the hottest topics right now, in fact, I just sent out a survey to our whole community saying, what are the topics you want to hear about? And it was like, I don't know, 85% were like AI and HR, like what's happening? And so last week we had a great session with Mandy Monk around AI and HR. Tell me a little bit about how you're thinking about this next big pivotal moment that's about to happen, right, to your career, to many of our careers, because of AI.
Yeah, I think, in general, data is a superpower that we can utilize in HR more than any other thing because that's what people listen to, right? They listen to data. And
Mhm.
so making sure that we figure out ways to utilize innovation and technology so that we can provide those insights to our people, that's always, one of my biggest focuses. And we're a little behind on the technology front at Jack Henry. We're working on it, just trying to figure out how to get there. But I think from an AI perspective, we just launched our AI chatbot for human resources, and so Ask Jack, I think, is what we're calling it. And so basically, it's just a front line. Instead of we have a kind of have our shared services where we have the front line to all of our employees, but this is an added front line. So and we built it in house, and so we started with maybe the out of the box option. But when our technology people were going through that, one of the biggest concerns, and I know that I've talked to a lot of people about this, but when somebody asks a question and the chatbot comes back with the wrong answer, it's a black hole. There's no true way when you use kind of an out of the box solution to go
Mhm.
and find, hey, where did they get that answer and why is it wrong and how do we fix it? And so we experimented with that for a while and then ended up building it in house. I mean, of course I didn't, but our amazing technology people did. And so that way, when a wrong answer is given, we can go back to the specific document that's uploaded in the file and what line it is and determine, oh, hey, this is where they got the wrong answer from. And then you can
Mhm.
train the
Mhm.
chatbot better. And so I think that's been a huge benefit for us. And we kind of tested out the first one. So now they're working on one for finance, one for legal, like all the other, different areas. And of course, agentic AI is coming soon, hot and heavy right now.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
people developing the agents around specific things. We're also working on all of that right now too.
Yeah, I wouldn't say you're behind at all. I mean, that's pretty impressive. I the Probably the 80% of the bell curve that I'm hearing is that the HR folks are very interested in this topic. Of course, personally, everybody, like you can't go to dinner party or cocktail, happy hour without this topic coming up.
Yeah.
But companies are behind, and a lot of the executives are like, let's slow roll this, let's see what everybody else is doing. But if you start to read some of the case studies, you realize like quickly companies are going to go by the way of the dinosaur if they don't get on board, right? And
Oh yeah, yeah. And I think, a lot of it's expense, right? And so trying to figure out like how do we provide the resources for all of our people? We have over 7,000 employees. And so trying to figure out how do we do that and don't do something else? Is the cost of this worth not doing something else? And I think a lot of times it is to give your people the resources to actually, build that efficiency and really get ahead there. But I gave you the quote earlier, that people say right now it's AI is not going to replace people, but it will replace people who don't use it. And so, really taking the time to learn and understand. And I think a lot of our employees are still not there. They're still trying to figure out, like, how can I even use this to my benefit? Is it going to be helpful or not? And so, the learning has been a big thing that we focused on first, with just getting some learning out to all of our employees, just like, hey, what is AI? How does this help you? How does this help your work, your day-to-day work? And then also encouraging people to experiment with it. In our team, we did, just a Teams chat and said, hey, I don't care what it is, personal, business, just put your story of what you played with in AI out there, just so that people can get an idea of all the things that they can do. And then once they kind of have that comfort, then they'll be more apt to experiment on it. But, we're a technology company that serves banks and credit unions. So very high security and making sure that our people understand what to put in there, what not to put in there, what sites to use. So we've had to go through, I'm on the AI executive strategy team, and you're just trying to determine what do we block, what do we allow, and giving the instructions and all of that, which is really important for all companies, especially for us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. Mandy, thanks for joining as well. And Bridget, Mandy talks about how you have to teach the AI, right? Like some of the lessons learned
Yeah.
around you got to teach the AI, not just your employees. But what's interesting, and I probably brought this up last week and worth bringing up again, because I do think it's such a cool merger. There's chief AI and people officers and chief people
Yeah.
AI officers now. The role is getting merged. And it makes a lot of sense because if you think about our coworkers in the future, they may not be flesh and blood.
Yeah.
Necessarily, right? There's going to be digital twins. There's going to be agents that can do the work that nobody else wants to do in any country.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's so many amazing opportunities. I think this is going to be so exciting. I hear about some people like close to retirement going, "Oh, I'm so glad I don't have to deal with that." I'm like, I could not be more excited about this topic and what it's going to
Yeah.
do.
I'm actually a big nerd, so I love playing around with it.
Mhm.
I probably am not as advanced as other people, but I love experimenting with it and seeing what it does from a work and personal standpoint, right? So
Yeah.
I think that, as we think through what AI can do for us from a business standpoint, it's really important to think through, as we lose a position or a person in the role, taking that time to zero base and say, hey, not just backfilling it, but what does this position do?
Mhm.
What can AI help with on this? Can we take the half of a position and give it to AI and then, add some other duties back to this role? And so really making sure that we go through the org design process and focus on ways that we can kind of gain that efficiency. I think it's really hard when you're thinking from a budget standpoint to put a cost or a dollar number to AI efficiency unless that you're replacing headcount, right? But your everyday efficiency, I think, is something that we're trying to think through. Like, how do we kind of measure that savings, and what does that look like, and how do you calculate it? So it's going to
Yeah,
be interesting.
I have some opinions around that. Like, do CEOs ever say, we want a really great culture and I want to measure the AI or the return on investment for having a really great culture? Like, we all know it's the right thing to do, but how do
How
you
do you
actually
measure it?
measure that?
Yeah.
Now, I know this is viewed in the lens of technology,
Yep.
but it's also like maybe it needs to be talked about in the terms of consequences
Right.
versus return.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If you don't do it, okay, so here's an example. If you don't talk to your kid about sex ed, does that mean they're not gonna have sex?
Yeah. Probably not.
So if you don't invest in the governance around AI, people are just gonna go shadow spend on their own, right?
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
they don't expense it, and maybe they're like, "It's just worth it. Like, I get to work 20 less hours this week because
Yeah.
I'll just pay for it myself."
Yeah.
So then is your data out there, right, in the middle of the ether versus being on a team, right, where
Yeah.
they're not learning from your technology, or if you don't know and you don't put it in Notebook LM versus you put it in the unpaid ChatGPT, what can that mean for your organization? So I think I hate to do the scare tactic thing, but yeah, I'd be curious from
It's
the
the
group.
cost of not doing it,
Yeah,
right?
what's
Yeah.
the cost of not doing it?
Mhm.
Sometimes we, without knowing exactly what the ROI, who knows what the ROI is right now? I mean, maybe
Yeah.
there's some ways to measure it in certain parts of HR, like even like talent acquisition. It's a lot easier to measure ROI for
Yeah.
anything in TA because you've got numbers and metrics that are very firm. So,
Yeah, or even instructional design, right?
mm,
Utilizing it to build trainings faster than you've ever imagined. Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right. Or they
Mhm.
can deliver faster. So our CHROschool.com, that free resource that we provide
Yeah.
HR leaders. So I had recorded a bunch of these lessons, and most of them take 20, 25 minutes. And our intern, Aiden Herman, actually just put it all into Synthesia, which is the learning
Yeah.
app that we use. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but
Yeah, we use that too. Yeah.
yeah. literally it took the same script, and I must talk really slow because it was like 8 minutes versus 25 minutes.
Oh, wow.
And it was just more clear, more concise, and then
Yeah.
we
Mhm.
put
It's
my
amazing.
we put my digital twin on it. So it
Mhm.
looks just like me saying all the stuff, but I just saved you, you know, almost 20 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. Looks like we have a question.
Oh, yes, let's see. Can you look at the additional value your team is generating because they aren't doing what AI is now doing? Can you monetize these outcomes? That's a great
We're
question.
doing that in a couple of different areas. And it just takes the time to track the hours, to log the hours that you're saving per employee or per task.
Mhm.
And then you can definitely monetize that. Yeah, it's a good example. Of course, if you reduce the whole headcount to turn to AI, that's an easy way to monetize it as well. Yeah.
Yeah. See, Mandy says, I learned last week from a new study done that to speed transformation, you need to focus on the full potential of data, technology, and people. Those who don't focus on the people as well are 7% less than likely to succeed. Yeah, makes a ton of sense. So,
Yeah.
um, Holly, what do you think other challenges with corporations implementing AI?
One of the biggest things that just kind of popped into my head as we were talking that we've been
Mhm.
dealing with at Jack Henry is related to fraud
Mhm.
um, and AI. And I think that that is a huge topic that HR people aren't quite thinking through as much as they should and really investigating how to protect their companies against it because
Mm.
these people are getting super good at
Mhm.
getting into organizations and utilizing deep fakes and all this other stuff to get into the application process. And so that's I think that's a challenge. It's a risk that we're kind of in the process of redoing our whole onboarding, interview, everything around making sure that we're protecting against deep fakes and threat
Mhm.
actors and all of those things. And so I think that's a huge challenge that is going to get harder and harder the more sophisticated AI gets that we
Yeah.
need to be paying attention to.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's been going on for years.
Yeah.
Um,
They're
my
just getting really good at it. Yeah.
yeah, my cousin, who has a niece in China, years ago, I think it was like on WhatsApp or something, right? Some kind of like FaceTime type program.
Mm-hmm.
And she got on, she's like, oh, my audio's not working. And got him to send her, or no, how did it go? They pretended like they were him, and
Mm-hmm.
his deep fake, asked her for money. And it was almost like a month's salary
Oh, wow.
she was sending him. So
Yeah.
pretty, pretty scary.
It is. And honestly, our recruiters right now are having to be little investigators. They have to if
Mhm.
they see anything that looks off, they go through a whole process of investigating social media and addresses and phone numbers and comparing them to other ones and just making sure we've found groups of 5 North Korean actors that are in our system applying for one job, and our recruiters have been great and some of our managers have been great at really identifying, hey, something's off here that we
Mhm.
need to dig into a little bit more. And then we find, a whole group and none of them are real. So
Mhm.
it's been increasing substantially over the past couple of months.
Just AI bots that are out applying.
Well, a lot of them are real people
Mhm.
that are applying just in different ways, but
Mhm.
we've also had some deep fakes. We've also had some just true
Mhm.
identity stealing happening too. But yeah.
Scary. Okay,
Yeah.
folks that have just joined us, can you guys drop in the chat what AI tool you use today, potentially, right?
Mhm.
Still will use. So I had ChatGPT wig out on me today before a mastermind meeting, and I was like, "Ugh, I gotta get all my notes from the last meeting so I can see what everybody talks about, and right, 'cause we
Mhm.
have our cohort meetings only every other month, and I just can't remember it all anymore. And
Yeah.
so I was like, okay, let me switch over to another one, and it's pays, right, to be able to know about multiple ways to leverage it. But it's so cool because I like, can you take these transcripts, and this is I'm not letting them learn in a open environment, right? It's locked
Mhm.
in
Yeah.
notebook, so these
Yeah.
transcripts are not going out to the public. But I'm just like, hey, just tell me what everybody said in the group, alphabetized by first name and tell me what their last thing is that they were interested in, solving for or working on. So then I have that at my fingertips, and you can't believe how much time that saves me. Hours, right? Of
Oh
preparation.
yeah. And we're doing some of it. We're just about to implement a new data tool
Mhm.
where you can literally tie all of your different data together, and then you can just type in a question that is, hey, what is the biggest future area that we need to focus on for trending? And then it'll pull in, utilizing all the different data. And so you're having those real-time discussions with the AI tool, and super excited to play with that and dive into that from an HR perspective. So
Yeah.
yeah, tons of tools out there that are
The
amazing.
the one I'm really excited about is using ChatGPT as a thought partner.
Yeah.
So,
Be your counselor.
yes, yes. So one of the business coaches I work with, she has a chat that she shared with us about overthinking. So sometimes entrepreneurs can overthink things so that they just stall. They don't launch anything because they're like just still thinking about whether or not they want to do it. And some of it's fear based, but this GBT literally will keep asking you questions and then be like, okay, what about this? What about that? And now
Yeah.
I'm overthinking it. And I never thought that AI would be good at that kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, okay, combine two spreadsheets, great. But I never thought that it would be such a good counselor. And it just sounded like she was in my head. Like it was her
Yeah.
voice.
It's
And
fascinating.
I was like, okay, this is really cool. All right, looks like we got lots of chat GPTs
Yeah.
of
I
them.
have I see a question there. Before implementing AI tools, do you feel confident about the data? You know what? We're working on our data right
Mhm.
now. So as we're in the implementation process, no, I wouldn't say that I feel confident about our data. And I do think that's super important. But I will say a lot of the AI tools out there right now will help you clean your data as part of the implementation. And so, yeah, so I think that's a really good point. You do want to make sure that your data is good or pretty decent
Yeah.
before connecting it.
I also think it highlights when your business processes are a mess.
Right. Yeah. But and implementing some of these tools help you work through that process again, right? And
Right.
redo it so that you have a cleaner process.
Looks like we got a winner here, Eric Moraz, Apollo, Higher Quotient,
All
Claude,
the things.
Mama, Gemini, Perplexity, and of course Chat. Wow, it sounds like Eric, you need to come and do your LinkedIn Live pretty soon. All right. Well, quick plug for our big CHRO event this year, September,
Yeah.
for sitting CHROs at companies over 500 employees and our mastermind members. We're bringing in Chris McKay and team to talk about this very topic, and they've got a framework for companies to use. So you have to try to figure
Wow,
it
that'd be
out.
fascinating.
Yeah, and they've used it with many, many large organizations. So, Holly, just before we leave, any parting words of wisdom to those who are rising CHROs or in the role and struggling? Any last minute thoughts of inspiration?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I've been in the role for about 3 years, and I think one of the biggest things is this job is extremely demanding and lots of pressure and emotional challenges. You never know what you're gonna, face during the day. And so I think one of the biggest things is having a really good support system around you. I think it's been amazing to be part of your team and really have the CHROs around me that I just, when I need a question or just I'm like, I feel like I'm failing and I need somebody to either validate that or tell me something better to do. So I think that's super important, and really taking your rest and making sure that you could work yourself to death if you wanted to. Like I could work 24 hours a day, but you have to force yourself to really give yourself that care, and otherwise you're not going to have the resilience that you need to be able to handle the hard things, and then build that group of community around you. I think it's super important to have that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, Holly. I
Yeah.
did not ask her to say that, you guys.
You
But
really didn't. Yeah.
yeah, but actually, I was just listening to a McKinsey podcast, and they talked about presilience, like not resilience, but like building the.
Yeah. Right.
And one of those things was friends, having friends,
Hmm.
and whether it's professional or otherwise, it's known to extend people's lives. It's known to make you happier. So
Yeah.
yeah, having friends, even if they have an HR title, you know,
Yeah.
it's
Then they don't have to. Eric doesn't, but we still like him.
yeah.
So that's good. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, guys. Hey, thank you so much. Put in the chat your thank yous for Holly for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's been
Yeah, I
great.
don't know how you guys do it. You're so busy and you probably rarely have time to use the bathroom, but you take time to get back and share with others. So I hope somebody's been inspired or you learned something from our LinkedIn Live today. Thanks, everyone. Oh, and
Thank you.
hi to everybody on YouTube as well.
Yeah. Hi.
Okay. Thanks. Take